Hello, and welcome to another episode of Piloting 101 for the Exceed Fighting System card game. This time I will be going over Red Horizon's bounty hunter, Lily. Lily is a gunslinging ranger who specializes in attacking opponents just outside their own optimal distance. In addition to her long range and gap-creating specials, her unique ability gives her normals extra range, which breaks the usual attack interactions that are the very fundamentals of Exceed. She also possesses one of the best Ultra Strikes in all of Season 1, the hypest card in Exceed, the Magic Bullet. While Lily usually excels in dictating the pace of a fight, there are a few things opponents can do that give her real trouble. She has below average damage, her many pushes can be countered by unmovable strikes or armored closers, and she can have a bad time against the truly long-range dedicated characters. Do you like fighting game characters with superb footsies that use fast long-range pokes to counter-hit again and again? Do you like having cards that invalidate many of your opponent's options in other card games? Or do you just have a thing for spirit mediums with a master's degree in Gun Fu? If any of these describe you, then you definitely want to try a few rounds with Lily. Lily's unique ability consists of two parts. First, all of her normal attacks get one extra maximum range at all times. While it may not appear as exciting as other UAs, it is nonetheless crazy good, because it lets her absolutely dominate at mid-range by moving all her normals one spot up on the speed curve. Allow me a quick example as to how Lily's UA turns the accepted normal attack interactions on their heads. Normally Cross is large and in charge at range 2. The attacks it does not outspeed and stun can be successfully avoided. But an opponent striking at range 2 will have to contend with Lily's Grasp, which stuffs Cross completely. When Lily exceeds, her normals earn an additional point of range. Now, her sweep catches a cross from range 2. Her grasps become oppressive mid-range tools, and dive can be used at range 1. Those are only some of the shenanigans that Lily players get to enjoy after she flips. It's insane. Do yourself a favor and try to exceed as soon as possible, delaying only if there's an opening to use Magic Bullet. Let's not forget the second part of her ability, which lets Lily stay in her optimal ranges with minimal effort. I just mentioned how a single range makes all the difference when it comes to this character, and with this, Lily is able to retreat one space for free. Just don't get caught up in continually using turns to backstep one when you don't have to. It can be a sure way to lose momentum, and eventually you'll be discarding anyway because of hand size limitation. Nothing's wrong with getting the force discount on a more sizable retreat. I like to divide Lily's strikes into two different categories, gap creators and ranged attacks. I will cover the positioning attacks first. Excessive Force is a second grasp for the gunslinger, losing power and the pull option but gaining an additional push. I like to strike with this on my turn, since it will outspeed reactive grasps. Two areas where this card shines over the normal is in pushing opponents out of sweep range and in setting up an Ultra Strike. To be honest, I don't see much use in this card's boost at all, as I've never encountered minimum range issues with Lily before. Just strike with this or use it as force. Double Tap is another big pusher with speed and range identical to Cross. The Ignore armor is nice for tacking on damage, but the only attacks it will stun on its own are the occasional armor-only character specials. 4 push is massive. Unless you are fighting a dedicated melee character, make sure to have some kind of follow-up in hand so you don't lose too much momentum. The boost here gives you the opportunity to blow your opponent back without risking a strike exchange. This option costs an additional force to play, but it's still very efficient given the space that it creates. Mugshot is far less safe than the previously mentioned gap creators, but it fills a niche that the pushers cannot. Lily can use it to spring backward or vault over the top of her opponent, and Focus doesn't destroy it like it does Excessive Force and Double Tap. The trouble with Mugshot as a strike is that its optimal range is really 1, which means its speed is way below the curve. Either you successfully scouted out a really slow move and dodged it, or you're going to get stunned. Mugshot's boost is all the fun of the strike without the inherent risk. Use this when you can, unless you've got a great read on the contents of the other player's hand or their tendencies. With Lily's last two specials, we finally get to talk about her long-range options. While being a respectable long-range ping on its own, Bullet Barrage becomes a punishing payout attack by discarding cards that hit at the range you are standing. Lily's UA applies to normals in hand for this effect, so for example, you can boost yourself at range 4 with a sweep or a spike. Something to note about BB is that its speed is below the curve at close range, but while it's true that the farther away you are, the easier it is to land, it also makes it harder to have applicable cards for its power-up. Balancing risk and reward with this strike takes practice and matchup knowledge, but after a while, this should become a pretty versatile option in your arsenal. Bullet Barrage's boost is a buffed exchange cards action for Lily. I think it works well for her both practically and thematically. She's reloading her guns because that's what you do with guns, and it helps her keep momentum up after spending lots of cards on positioning or your other Bullet Barrage. Hair Trigger is my favorite special strike on Lily, and another reason her mid-range game is so oppressive. Its speed is on curve at its minimum range, and used further out, it basically becomes free gauge and damage. Its after-move trigger is just as frightening to opponents as its speed, since anything it doesn't stun, it usually can avoid. Just Keep Shooting is similar to the boost on BB, but it is more about capitalizing on specific situations than gaining hand advantage. There will be times when Lily's in a great position to hit with something, but lacks the correct card to do so. That's what this effect is for. That being said, Hair Trigger Strike is so good that I never really find time to use this one. Magic Bullet is one of the most feared strikes in all of Exceed. You only need to see the top third of this card to understand why it's so good. It has below average gauge cost for its damage, and is 3 points higher than the speed curve. Its text may be exciting, and hitting this as a wild swing is hype as heck, but don't go doing flips just to make this thing trigger. It's more than easy enough to hit this out of hand, given Lily's retreat discount and setup attacks like Excessive Force. As for its boost, I suppose the extra range and speed are good for deciding strikes in the endgame, but really try to strike with this card whenever you can. The gang is all here for Lily's second Ultra, the Wild Bunch. The strike is a straight upgrade over Bullet Barrage, the same basic stats, but with a much higher damage cap. What I said about BB applies to this, though of course its risk and reward values are dramatically greater. While not necessarily a lot better, Suppressive Fire to me is certainly a lot more interesting. It's like a Bizarro Ulrich Ultra Boost that kind of accomplishes the same thing. Playing this boost really pressures opponents into striking or teching, since any further attempts at footsies will just get them shot. Keep in mind that continuous boosts are not discarded until a strike resolves, so Suppressive Fire will deal damage to an opponent that is moved as a result of Lily's push cards. Also, know that damage taken from this attack does not go towards stun or guard calculations. Now we go on to some ways that Lily can capitalize on her normal cards. Because of her UA, her normals are all incredibly powerful tools. I'm only speaking about a few things here because, really, I believe taking the time to think about how Lily abuses the standard rock, paper, scissors of the normals is a good way to really acquaint yourself with the central Exceed mechanic. I feel Lily needs the benefit of block less so than many other characters. Save it for parrying cross or focus, which are banes to her game due to their boost and strike effects respectively, or soaking something really telegraphed and really scary. Focus is a much needed defensive card for Lily. Still, reading is fantastic to guarantee huge hits with the Wild Bunch and Bullet Barrage at close ranges, so look for openings to use it, especially in the late game. Giving BB and Wild Bunch extra speed with light lets them hit closer much more consistently, which means it's easier to find cards to discard for damage. Still, I think the damage is better just using sweep. Lily doesn't really need the guard except for, you guessed it, her payoff moves, but the extra range from her UA makes Spike useful for beating armored moves that usually don't need to concern themselves with it. Using dive at range 1 and 2 can be risky, but it still provides a mix-up with her fast pushback cards. Lily always wants to be in control, so tech anything the opponent plays that messes with your speed and range advantages. The retreat on its boost is always welcome, but if any ranged character can make assault work, it's Lily. She has access to fast moves and positioning boosts at range 1, and when used from further out, it becomes an above-the-curve strike that sets up a mid-range mix-up. I save Cross for when pushing the opponent won't work. Using at its bonus ranges is stupid safe, and a great setup for the bees. Lily's Grasp is just absurd. She'd benefit from its extra power, sure, but the strike is just too good. Use it as a reactive player at bonus ranges to keep the speed advantage and provide a great mid-range opening on your following turn. And that's my take on Piloting 101 for Lily. I hope that you found it useful. Now that I've finished covering the print and play characters, I've given thought to changing my video structure. I can either keep on doing character guides like these, or I can switch to making far briefer overviews, which gives me a much higher chance of providing material for the game's whole roster. What's more important to you as a listener? Having a guide for every character in the near future, or having fewer, more strategic ones? I'd love to hear your thoughts. As always, if you want to purchase Exceed or other great games for yourself, head over to level99games.com and support the creators. Until next time, this is Wind Up Bird, reminding you that there's two sides to every card and that wild swinging is always an option.